convinced it's the right one. A journey that will influence the lives of many. That will make life better, more exciting, more flexible, simpler, digital, electric. We have set the course. And we are ready. The future is what drives us. The ultimate motivation. That's why we are accelerating. Ever forward. On our way to zero. On our way to becoming the most desirable brand for sustainable mobility. On our way to the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Wolfsburg and welcome to our annual media conference for Volkswagen. 2021 for us, like for the entire industry, truly was a very challenging year. The continued impact of the COVID pandemic and the semiconductor shortages obviously were felt in our business and for Volkswagen. However, this was also the first year of our Accelerate strategy, a time where we've made very important investments in future areas. And together with you, we now would like to look back at this past year, but at the same time, let us also look ahead. Now, in a moment, I'm going to welcome the CEO of Volkswagen Passenger Cars, Ralf Brandstätter, and the CFO, Alexander Seitz. The two gentlemen have prepared two little presentations for you, and then also we'll have Scott Keogh, Pablo Disi, and Stefan Wallenstein, who will talk about the current situation in our sales regions of North America, South America, and China. And then after that, we, as always, will have time to take your questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've already said that this past year for Volkswagen was a challenging one. And that obviously is not going to change in 2022. And this is what I'd like to talk about now with our CEO of Volkswagen Passenger Cars. Hello, Ralf. Now, Ralf, when we talk about 2021, what comes to mind is the COVID pandemic and the semiconductor shortage, but so many other things have happened within Volkswagen. So what is your highlight of that past year? Well, Robin, quite a few of those come to mind, and whenever new products come out and are launched, with the Taro or the Taigo, just to name two of them, but also the ID.4 that we launched in China, in Europe, and in North America. Now, a special moment also was when for the first time we hit this button to activate the first over-the-air update for our ID model, so that was special as well, and it's worked really well. So I think for all of us, for the entire team, that was a special moment. It was new, and certainly it was a highlight. Now, another highlight certainly was something for me quite personally, namely over the past year, I have really and truly felt that readiness and willingness to change within our teams. So people are ready, are willing actually to actively shape the future, both in R&D, where we're separating now hardware and software development, focusing on systems engineering, certainly important for R&D, but for all divisions. And then the Trinity project. That's a project that has truly electrified us, both in terms of that product, so a new product features that it comes with, but also we have taken a decision to reinvent production here at headquarters. So that decision was a pivotal one. We're going to build a new production facility with new engineering concepts. So truly, I think these were the highlights for me. Now, this year, it is the events in Ukraine that we'll be focusing on. And what's the impact for our business, you think? Well, I think there will be significant consequences, of course. But again, this doesn't matter as much if you bear in mind how people are suffering in Ukraine and what ordeal they have to go through. So truly, we are in our thoughts with people in that country. And all we can do is hope to return to a peaceful development. peace in Europe truly is what we need, and people should sit at the negotiating table and agree on such arrangements that you would expect in the 21st century here in Europe. You want to talk to each other. You want to use diplomacy to come to solutions. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to express my thanks and truly gratitude to all of our employees who work in different task forces. I've been working in the semiconductor task force. Now I'm moving into mitigating that Ukraine crisis, and really people are doing an outstanding job to make sure that we stabilize our supply chains. And what's also true is that we're really grateful to all those of you who have taken their personal commitment that extra mile further by helping people in Ukraine and mitigate that conflict. And we really feel that people are standing together here in Europe, and I'm really grateful that we have people that can do that. So what do you think? What does that mean for the VW business? Well, to be specific about that and what that all means, well, it's certainly difficult, and we're working on that in trying to understand what's going to happen. But we do already feel now there's a direct impact on our supply situation in Zwickau and other production plants where we cannot build vehicles at this moment. Now, I think we can compensate that thanks to our regional footprint in China, North America, South America, and also some plants in Southern Europe, in Portugal and Spain, are less affected by that crisis. And this is really where our global production network comes in to help us really to compensate for those undersupplies. But it's true that we need to be back to stabilize our business quickly to make sure we can look ahead. Now, Ralph, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to see you in a second. So let me also give you a housekeeping announcement to representatives of the media. Whenever you have a question, please submit them in writing in our chat window, but you may also want to dial in by phone at a later point. So that's what I wanted to share with you. With that, it's over to Ralph Brandstetter. Ralph, please.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren,
Ladies and gentlemen, 2021 was an exceptional year. However, Volkswagen has successfully stayed the course. In a challenging environment, we not only stayed on the operative course we had charted, but also improved our profitability. We're more profitable, more crisis-resistant, and we are better performing than a year before. With our Accelerate strategy, we have concomitantly accelerated our transformation. This is the result of the great team effort of every single one of our 200,000 colleagues worldwide. I'd like to thank you most warmly on behalf of the entire Board of Management, and I would like to thank you personally. Ladies and gentlemen, on to the key figures of 2021. 4.9 million vehicles less delivered to customers, which is 8% less than the previous year. Nevertheless, we've increased our revenue by 5 billion to 76 billion euros. Operating result, despite the pronounced contraction in sales and high capex into future development, was at 2 billion euros, or 2.5 billion euros without China. The return on sales improved to 0.6% to 3.3%. And we are really set on achieving our margin target of 6% in 2023. Volkswagen has strengthened its economic viability and profitability. At the same time, we've worked on the costs. Since 2019, our fixed costs have been cut by 1 billion euros. At the same time, the number of highly equipped vehicles in our model mix has been increased. North and South America, for the first time for several years, are now back in the profit zone. The regions are now sustainably profitable. And that underlines that we've improved our resilience. An important contribution came from our attractive and strong margin key product on MQB basis. The Tiguan, the T-Roc and the Taygo and the new Tiger in Europe, the Taos in North and South America, the Atlas and Atlas Cross Sports in the US, the Tamarack in China, and of course, the Golf. It remains a bestseller, both in 2021 and the years before. It was the most sold car. We have accelerated our steps in this direction, forward. We have geared our strategy accelerate to this effect, which we presented exactly a year ago. Electrification, digitalization, and business cases, and autonomous car driving, new business cases, and autonomous driving are important area. We've made headway. The electric offer has been expanded. 2021, we've launched 3 E-models, the ID4, ID5, and the performance variant GTX, and the ID6 in China. The world car ID4 for Europe, China, and the US became a bestseller from the get-go. With 120,000 units, it was the most frequently delivered Volkswagen electric model. Worldwide, at 369,000 electric vehicles delivered to customers, we had a plus of 73% over the previous year. The number of fully electric vehicles at 263,000 units has almost doubled. In Germany, Sweden and Finland and Ireland, every third electric vehicle comes with a VW logo. In the US, we have, from the get-go, achieved rank 4 of the leading E-OEMs, BEV OEMs. 2 out of 3 ID4 customers joined the brand. In the US, our order books are full. In China, our E-offensive is working. Semiconductor shortage, however, has decelerated the ramp-up. We could have built even more electric cars, but 77,000 e-vehicles were able to be built. The jump to much more than 4 times the previous year was a successful year indeed, with ambitious targets. The ID Life was the highlight of the Frankfurt Motor Show. Our vision for urban entry-level mobility is digital, likable and sustainable. 2025, our e-vehicles in the compact car segment for 20,000 euros is launched. On the way to zero, we are on track. Our e-car fleet was at 113 grams per kilometer, which is 6 grams less carbon emissions than stipulated by the lawmakers. And to this effect, we have made an important contribution to carbon compliance of the group, of the Volkswagen Group. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen is transforming into a tech company. The efforts of the past year are now reaping the benefits. We are reaping the benefits of these with the current software updates on the ID family, also in cars like the Golf. Using these, we improve the digital customer experience. In Europe, the over-the-air updates have been successfully rolled out, and we've had more than 100,000 updates for our cars in the ID family. With this, we create the preconditions for functions on demand, additional services that customers can flexibly book them when they need them and where they need them. By the way, last December, we quite successfully kicked this function and this offer off. Particularly popular are the sat-nav function and the full beam assist. The new business cases in Germany have become possible. We entered these. Volkswagen Auto Abo, the subscription service, starting September, became to be available in Germany and is meeting with resounding interest and acclaim. The users, by the way, on average are 10 years younger than the traditional Volkswagen drivers were, and this is why we are tapping into new customer groups. The offers will be expanded. It is important that we control the interplay between technical development, design, the model series and sales, the target. The vehicle becomes part of the digital life world of our customers. Ladies and gentlemen, our strategy is gaining traction, and we've made a leapfrog advancement when it comes to forging ahead. We want to become more profitable and make Volkswagen the most attractive brand for electric mobility. In 2021, we have made tremendous headway towards this. More on this is something Alexander Seitz will tell you about.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, auch von mir ein herzliches Willkommen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome to our annual press conference as well.
And
indeed, Ralf Manstetter has just explained to you the most important milestones of our financial year. But let me also now briefly talk about our key financials here. The unit sales of the Volkswagen brand in 2021 was at 2.7 million vehicles. Now, that is again less than in the year before. Why is that? Well, it is mainly related to the supply shortages with semiconductors. In other words, we couldn't build quite as many vehicles as we could have. So our order book also has never been as high as it is today, and it actually shows you that our products are very much in demand. SUVs now account for 40% of our global volumes. So it's the most compelling and fastest growing market segment. But also for our BEVs, we are seeing top-selling models in all of our regions. So despite a decline in unit sales in 2021, we've been able to increase our sales revenue to 76 billion euros. That's 7% or 5 billion euros more than in the prior year. So that is also predominantly thanks to our attractive model lineup. But also, increasingly, we have been able to sell better-equipped cars. So that is very positive. And the operating profit before special items compared to the prior year, we've been able to increase significantly despite the lower unit sales. Our operating profit before special items after those 12 months of the past year came in at 2.5 billion euros, which is 2 billion more than in the prior year. The return on sales before special items for 2021 was 3.3%. In other words, 2.7 percentage points more than in the prior year. So this means we're exactly in the target range of 3 to 4% that we have budgeted. And there's a number of reasons why that is so. Now, first of all, I said that thanks to selling higher equipped cars, we've been able to improve the quality of earnings. We've allocated semiconductors in such a way that we could increase our margin despite shrinking sales, volume sales that is. And then our regions of North and South America also have successfully implemented their turnaround plans and have made a positive contribution to the operating profit. So they were significant above the prior year, and we had a number of negative foreign currency translation effects like in high inflation countries like Argentina with the peso, but thanks to price adjustments, we've been able to overcompensate for that. Our product costs, however, were somewhat impacted by commodity costs. That was particularly true for steel and for precious metals. We had to pay much more than in the year before. So despite this rather challenging market environment, we have been able to get a positive result out of improved sourcing performance. In North America also, we've been able to compensate for those negative effects. And in South America, there were still negative impacts related to material costs, high inflation, and foreign exchange effects. But we've generally optimized our overheads. R&D spending in 2021 have increased compared to the year before. Well, why is that? Well, that is because we have continued to transform our businesses to invest in future areas as well. Now, when it comes to cost reduction measures and the improvements in earnings quality, we have managed to improve the resilience of Volkswagen in 2021, and we've reduced our break-even threshold. Thanks to restrictive spending policies, we've been able to exceed our overheads targets for 2021. This is also thanks to reduced marketing spending and restrictive hiring programs, which has allowed us to keep a level freeze of our headcount at Volkswagen. Fixed costs in total were more than 10% below 2019, which is the pre-crisis year. So more than 1 billion euros less, not factoring in R&D, that is, but still, it's a historic low. In the past fiscal year, we have reduced our investment spending to an unprecedented low level of 2008 and 2009. So that is, again, thanks to good investment discipline and savings. We've also prioritized a number of investment projects. Our capex ratio comes in at 3.9%, which is slightly below the strategic corridor of 4 to 5%. But when we talk about investments, it's not really about the relative quantity, really, but it's about the target. Because we're using those 3 billion euros to invest them in a targeted fashion. We're focusing on what our brand strategy Accelerate has defined, namely the important segments of transforming our production facilities, the electrification of our product portfolio, and digital. Now, what that means is that 50% of our spending at Volkswagen goes into electromobility and products and factories. Capex savings then also have helped us to accelerate our R&D spending that we need for ramping up electric mobility. And it also has allowed us to implement our innovation strategy together with our China roadmap for development functions. Now, we're focusing here clearly on the connectivity of our vehicles, focusing on new software features, and also try to increase product appeal for our customers. R&D costs in 2021, therefore, have gone up compared to the prior year, but at 4.1%, they were almost in line with our strategic target of 4%. Now, we should also bear in mind that R&D costs that are applying here in Germany, but for Chinese projects, do not come with sales related to vehicles sold. Why? Because our Chinese joint ventures are only consolidated as a dividend payment in our financial results. So without this effect, the R&D ratio is only 3.7%. But there again, 40% of all of that R&D spending goes into electric mobility. Our North and South America regions in 2021 were significantly above the previous year. In fact, they have significantly exceeded the break-even level thanks to cost discipline, restructuring of the business, and an earnings-focused management of sales channels. Now, in 2020, those regions have been burdening our business results, but in 2021, thanks to the break-even, they have been a good, positive contributor for the operating result of the Volkswagen brand, and they've really turned around the business. So, those were our key financials in 2021, and now let us have a look ahead at 2022. So, what do we have on our plate here? Now, this year, when it comes to volume sales, we expect an increase compared to 2021. So we're quite confident that no later than in the second half of this year, the availability of semiconductors should improve. In other words, we will be building more cars, we'll be selling more cars from then on, and the profits and also our operating return on sales is going to go up in 2021. So a margin of 6% until 2023. So by 2023 remains our general objective. Now, in 2022, we also want to optimize our working capital further to increase the operating net cash flow. But having said that, I should add that these are provisional projections because no one knows how the situation in Ukraine is going to develop in the coming weeks and months. The war in Ukraine and the economic sanctions vis-à-vis Russia obviously may have a severe impact on our forecast for 2022. Now, we want to keep our investment activities at the lower end of our strategic corridor. As in the year before, we are clearly placing the priority on strategic future areas like our campus Sandkamp development center. Now, we're keeping the investment ratio generally low, but we can also take additional spending whenever needed in R&D for our growth strategy in the US as well. And that is important because the transformation ahead of us is still a major challenge. Now, with our Accelerate strategy, we also, the clue's in the name, we accelerate the transformation from turning into a software-based mobility provider rather than being just a car maker. And such a fundamental transformation under our own steam is possible if our profitability is right. And we, as the finance division at Volkswagen, need to make sure that this is possible thanks to leveraging efficiencies across the value chain. So the better we do that, the faster Volkswagen will be headed towards its new course to become a carbon neutral and digital player. Now, this year, and also in the coming years, we are going to take a number of measures to improve our earnings quality. We are going to continue our earnings-based management. We are going to stabilize the profit contributions of our regions and grow them from there. And we have to be strict on cost discipline, especially overheads. We need to keep our spending ratios stable. We want to reduce also the number of model variants and derivatives, reduce complexity, but at the same time increase productivity in our factories and lower the break-even threshold even further. So, as you see, there's a lot on our plate here. In 2022, we're moving ahead, transforming the Volkswagen brand as we have done in those past years, not only here at headquarters, but also in our regions. And this is what we're going to have a look at our regions, namely North and South America. And for that, it's now over to our Head of Communications, Robin Aschhoff.
Alexander, vielen Dank. Wir haben es gerade gehört, unsere Region in Nord.
Thank you very much, Alexander. We've just heard that our regions in North and South America have become profitable for the first time in many years. Great work was done over the last few years. So I'll switch back to the regions for the look back onto the year. The beginning is Pablo de Silva. Liebe Journalisten, meine Damen und Herren, die Sie zugeschaltet sind, es macht mir eine große Freude, zu Ihnen anlässlich der Konferenz sprechen zu dürfen. Und das war einer der Hauptgründe für einen unseren erfolgreichen Turnaround.
I am proud and grateful for the initiative, responsibility, talent and commitment of our team during these last couple of years. 2021 was the year of our turnaround. We achieved profitability and positive net cash flow. And we have also gained significant market share despite of the pandemic and chip shortage. In line with the Volkswagen Accelerate strategy, which was based in a consistently improvement of our product portfolio, combined with a reduction of our fixed costs and adjustment in the capacity of our 6 factories in the region. We have also completed the most aggressive product portfolio renovation in the history of our company, launching over 20 very successful products aligned with regional customer expectations. Most of these products, like the Nivus and Taos, were developed by our local team, and not only from a design and engineering point of view, but also by creating the infotainment and digital ecosystem. I am very proud to see the Nivus named Taigo, which is produced and sold in Europe. We have also developed and localized the infotainment system, which we call VoxPlay, exported to around 70 countries, and started the creation of a digital ecosystem where we're monetizing in the digital space. We're also leaders in the A0 SUV segment, with over 20% of market share with Nivus and T-Cross in both markets of Brazil and Argentina. Also in 2021, we started many initiatives around the Volkswagen Way to Zero. We approved at board level the creation of a biofuel research and development center in Brazil. With almost 90% reductions of CO2 emissions, ethanol represents a complementary strategy until e-mobility is a viable option in South America. And looking ahead at 2022, we see a growing market with many opportunities, and also some challenges with regards to inflation and volatility in the currency, especially in a presidential election year in Brazil and the negotiation with the IMF in Argentina. But this team has proven that we can take the business opportunities and also face and work to minimize our challenges. We feel a strong market, particularly in the SUV and pickup segments, And with an additional investment of some 1 billion euros until 2026, we will make our business in the region even more resilient and future-proof. We're investing in 3 key strategic areas: additional regionalized models, digitalization, and decarbonization. And in the following years, we will expand the compact family cars for the entry segment based on the NQB platform, which brings substantial development cost savings. We will also boost our software competence, enhance digital experience, connect our fleet, and speed up new data-driven business models. In 2022, we will continue to work together as a strong team with clear understanding of where we need to go and to continue to grow our business in a profitable and sustainable way in South America. Muito obrigado, muchas gracias. Thank you once again for your time.
Pablo, vielen Dank. Und damit schalten wir jetzt in die USA zu Scott Q.
Pablo, thank you very much, and we'll switch to the US for Scott Q. It's great to see you. The ID bus has arrived. The car is now the star at this Southwest in Austin. Then it will come as a production car, and now we're looking back to 21.
Everyone around the globe, thank you for this opportunity to share the state of our business here in America and the excitement we have for the road ahead as we fulfill our strategic role for the Volkswagen brand. This is a story in 4 rather straightforward parts. First, of course, is profitability. I'm proud to report we're back with a healthy business. The Volkswagen brand is profitable again, and not only in the U.S., but in all North American markets, Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And we have every intention of keeping it that way, full stop. And we're doing that by utilizing our production capabilities to deliver the right products to the market, which of course leads to the second part. We are meeting the market with products the American consumers want. And in America, there are no products more desired or profitable than SUVs. Sport utility vehicles accounted for more than 70% of our sales in 2021, 15% just a few short years ago. With the Atlas and Atlas Cross Sport continuing to lead the charge, while the all-new Taos and newly reimagined Tiguan meet the growing market for compact SUVs. As a result, despite the ongoing supply chain challenges plaguing the entire automotive industry, our new vehicle sales in the U.S. were the highest they've been since 2013. With just over 375,000 units sold, we finished up 15% versus the previous year. And Volkswagen dealers delivered those results with lower inventory, higher turn rates, and the lowest incentives we've seen in decades. Thirdly, those dealers and their customers also answered our call to electrification with the ID.4. Dealers love it because it's quickly become the most profitable performer in their portfolio. Customers love it because it delivers on every promise we made, and we've made them, in fact, EV believers. 90% of ID.4 owners were first-time EV buyers, 70% were new to Volkswagen. To continue that conquest, we've committed over 20 million through this year to our dealer network, transforming Volkswagen dealerships into EV experience hubs, serving communities across the country. Because we have clearly arrived at the tipping point for electrification in the U.S., so now is the time to accelerate our strategy. And that has started with localizing ID.4 production at our factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with American-made ID.4s rolling off the line in the fall of 2022. We are confident enough to increase our 2030 target for EV sales from 50 up to 55%. Finally, we are reclaiming our role as a cultural, iconic brand in America, bringing products to the market that not only advance our global vision, but having a little fun while we're at it, with that classic Volkswagen wink. We see it, of course, right here in the ID Buzz, in the drawings and paintings the next generation of Volkswagen drivers send me. We see it in the emails we receive from customers every day. We see it in the pride ID.4 owners have as ambassadors of our vision, like the ID.4 owner who got a surprise visit from California's governor because his EV was the 1 millionth vehicle to be registered in the state. For all of us at Volkswagen of America, all of this can be summed up in 2 words: drive bigger. We believe it's our mission, the Volkswagen mission, to lead the industry into this new era of mobility. And that's what I'm proud to say we're doing each and every day here in the States. Thank you very, very much.
Scott, vielen Dank. So viel zu unserem Geschäft.
Scott, thank you very much. So much on our business in the regions North and South America. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important market for Volkswagen is China.
There's hardly any other country where the car industry develops as dynamically, and nowhere else can we really see the future of mobility where it has been so advanced. So there's a good reason for us to look into China, and for that I'd like to welcome our brand board member for China, Stefan Mellenstein. Stefan, hello, welcome. Now, first of all, I'd like to talk about something that is actually quite clear, namely China has been affected by the semiconductor shortage. So what do you think about that situation? Well, hello, Robin. One thing at the top, Volkswagen in 2021 has remained the number one in the Chinese market, despite those challenges that you just mentioned. But it's true. If you look at the numbers, the past year was without any doubt a very difficult one for our Volkswagen brand here in China. But, I'd like to take it with a grain of salt. We didn't really have a demand issue. We had a supply issue, really, because there was customer demand. But because of what you mentioned, the lack of computer chips and also the local COVID-19 plant shutdowns, we couldn't produce enough vehicles. Now, unfortunately, this has also affected our ID family deliveries, especially now in a moment where we're actually having the right products for a burgeoning market. Now, the ID family was going really well into the month of September. Every month we've been able to double our sales. But then when the fourth quarter hit, the ID family was affected by semiconductor bottlenecks. And then in December we had some losses related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we couldn't sell all the IDs that we wanted to. So just to give you a general gut feeling, we lost about 20,000 units versus budget. And also for the internal combustion engines, that supply shortage has also eroded our market shares, no question at all. So we really want to make sure to see a stabilized semiconductor supply here to focus on the market requirements. Now, a moment ago, we talked about the special market requirements in China. So what is important when it comes to the future developments in your market? Well, just last year, the NEV market, the new energy vehicle market, really was the most dynamically growing market segment, something you can hardly imagine in Europe. We have more than 100 vehicle brands here, so it's very competitive. But the NEV segment is a first mover market with a very untypical pattern. Now, what does that mean? We see a very strong focus on the mini or entry-level segments, so really low-cost or inexpensive electric vehicles, but then also quite the opposite, a really strong premium price segment. So you have those two extremes that account for about 60% of the NEV market. But ID vehicles are targeting the middle, in between the two extremes. So the volume segment that is also now continuously growing because electric mobility also has now arrived at the middle classes in China. Now, this transition of the Chinese car market towards new energy vehicles has been slowing down a bit compared to Europe, but still the customer expectations are growing massively, especially when it comes to connectivity. So NEVs in China always stand for the smart car. And we're catering to this trend this year. Customers in China will be able to receive over-the-air updates. So that's good, and that helps us not only to fix issues, but also allows us to update functions, features, services, and really grow the customer experience as we go along. So that's very important for the year to come also. Now we're going to launch a unique augmented reality head-up display, the navigation system. And then there's another trend, which is automated driving. We have a clear roadmap here all the way to level 2+ functionalities. So this is what we're going to launch as a standard here in China in the next 2 years to come. But it's not only automated driving, but it's also autonomous driving, where we, Volkswagen, wants to be a pioneer. So what can we expect? How do we respond to the market requirements there in China? Well, something that's entirely clear, and actually there's been a decision already taken that we're going to bring R&D into the country here. We're going to build a new R&D presence at Anhui. And obviously, we're also ramping up now our Carrier China brand here as well. Now, today, as we speak, together with our joint ventures, we have about 6,000 engineers working out of China, so it's quite a lot. We want to double those numbers of the Carrier staff of 600. So we're in good shape, I think. And it also shows you that we're responding to the local customer expectations. We want to be trendsetters or trend shapers. And I think in the long term, innovations out of China can also be launched in other markets of the world. Now, Stefan, you just said a moment ago that we're doing really a good job in terms of offering e-vehicles for the Chinese market. Just last year, 5 ID models for the Chinese market. And also, we started rearranging the sales channels as well. So what have you done? Well, yeah. In order to tap that market potential of new energy vehicles, we also have to focus our attention on new customer groups. And it's really a growing number of digital natives, young people earning good money. And they're not only open for new brands and vehicles, but also new business models. So therefore, our decision was to sell our ID models through the agency model, which we do in Germany as well. And that allows us to reach out to our customers directly. And also what we want to do is to bring those vehicles to the main street, so to speak, in shopping centers, wherever people spend a lot of time. So we already have built up 120 ID stores in the main cities here across China. So they're focusing just on this vehicle model. And we see the customer visits there are much higher than in conventional dealerships. And our conversion rate is actually about 50% higher than in a conventional dealership. So we believe that those ID city stores are really the right way forward. Now, last question for you. What's the outlook going forward for the Chinese business? Well, the semiconductor supply remains volatile. In the next couple of days, weeks, we would expect more limitations there as well. However, when it comes to March and April, we're already seeing some improvements there. And I hope, Robin, that, when it comes to the deliveries, we come up to the level of 2020. Not 21, but the 2020, which was the pre-semiconductor crisis year. Now, when it comes to ID sales, we want to double them, compared to last year. We'll see, maybe more than double them. But we not only need more semiconductors, obviously, we also work on another front. We're going to grow the number of ID stores and ID sales agents. And as I said before, we're going to offer more OTA updates. And all of that, I think, will provide us with some tailwind in terms of ID sales. But one thing's clear. By the end of the decade, we want to and we have to have a market share in NEVs as we have enjoyed in the past 40 years when it comes to conventional combustion engine cars. So I think the course has been set. Well, thank you very much, Stefan, for that insight into the Chinese market. I'll talk to you later in our Q&A session. And with that, it's over to Ralph for some final comments on 2022.
Ladies and gentlemen, our strategy is gaining traction. Even in 22, Accelerate sets the course. For the electrification of our vehicle fleet, we have ambitious objectives and targets. By 2030, at least 70% of our sales in Europe should be electric cars. In North America and China, at least 50%. We are further expanding our portfolio. The MEB in this is a central competitive advantage. And the signs are all pointing to e-mobility. We'll further develop our MQB models over the coming years. The next generation is going to leapfrog ahead in terms of value, the Passat, Tiguan and Tayron will set new standards when it comes to quality. These Volkswagen bestsellers create the basis for investments into the future. MQB in perfection. We have set our sights on ambitious targets. By 2022, we'll be launching, at least 2026, we'll launch at least one new electric vehicle on the roads, and the focus will be on lasting quality and innovation. Last week, the ID. Buzz was launched in Hamburg. No other car has electrified the automotive world as much before. Worldwide, and particularly in the US, where the VW Bus is a bit of a cult even. So enthusiastic and excited are people. The ID. Buzz shows as well how flexible and how performance-oriented the electro platform MEB is. It's the most emotional member of the ID. family and is a very likable car for the Volkswagen brand. And it has what it takes. It has that unmistakable appeal. 120,000 units will be sold annually. The ID.5 comes, it's the first SUV coupe from Volkswagen, with a premium feel. It exudes it. The ID.5 is the first car with a new software ID 3.1. We're looking at very full order books brimming with new orders, which we're pleased at. The show car ID will be launched mid-April in Beijing and gives you an outlook on the next member of the ID family's design. It has aerodynamic design, high range of 700 kilometers, and an hitherto unobtained space inside, and a premium interior. The first vehicles will be supplied in the second half of the year 2023 to customers in China. 2025, the first production version of the ID. Life, a compact car on the MEB platform basis, will be launched. And will create in every segment an electric vehicle to offer, thus creating the preconditions for our target to become world market leader in all things mobility. Even now, the demand for our ID models is rising steadily, which is why we are ramping up production of our electric models up every year. By 2022, 3 more factories will go live in Emden and Chattanooga. We have the mass production of the ID.4 starting, and in Hanover, the ID. Buzz is leaving the conveyor lines. And of course, with every new model, we make the electromobility experience even more customer-friendly. The ID.5 is the first car from Volkswagen with bidirectional charging. The battery of the electric car not only supplies the power for the car itself, but becomes a power bank. And charging will become even more comfortable than filling fuel. In the course of this year, we'll offer all ID models with plug and charge. Car and charging point directly communicate with one another, charging for the charging automatically. With Accelerate, and we put digitalization of our vehicles in the entire company even more in the focus. Even this year, we'll be starting with the worldwide rollout and of our over-the-air updates in the US, Canada, and China. These are the preconditions to us being able to offer function on demand in all markets. A new latest software release, ID 3.1, will incrementally be available to all ID customers. The new version improves range, shortens the charging times, it improves convenience and comfort, it optimizes the way customers control it, interact with it, and it's quite convincing with the improved intuitive voice operation and individualizable multi-stop route planning. The new software release will, compared to the competitors, have better stability and better features. Just one example, our travel assist with the swarm intelligence data will make it possible to change lanes partially automated on autobahns and motorways. Our parent factories here in Wolfsburg forge ahead with transformation. Volkswagen is going through a dramatic renewal program, the largest in its history. From there, the Beetle and the Golf have written automotive history, and now a future plan for scalable systems platform means that the highly scalable electro architecture of the group is made here. The top model of our electric fleet will roll off the conveyor lines from 2026. With the Trinity, we'll be revolutionizing the fully electric mobility experience and the new standards for range, charge speed, and interconnected driving experiences. With the Trinity, we make the Wolfsburg site future-ready. With 800 million euros, we'll be investing into a new building of the development center and the Zandkamp campus. Up to 4,000 employees will work on this electric platform SSP and the Trinity on vehicles and technologies. Thomas Ulbrich and his team developed the worldwide largest development unit for modern development hubs. Clear focusing of all systems on function like the decoupling of hardware and software, shortened development cycles by 25%. Cars will be developed in 40 months instead of 54. For the 2 billion euro, we intend to set up in a directly adjacent to the parent factory, the Stammwerk, a new Trinity factory that will also change production there. The new plant will set new standards, fewer variants, better components, new production and logistics concepts. Our target, reducing the production time per vehicle to 10 hours. Immediately after the start of the global rollout with the SSP platform, with the Trinity start at our parent factory, and also in North America, and the Chinese models will be built on this highly scalable platform and be launched. From next year on in Wolfsburg, we'll make the ID.3. The high demand for the ID model means that Zwickau and possibly Emden can even not satisfy this huge demand. I'd like to thank all colleagues who, since April 21, have worked to the best of their abilities to bring this plan forward. Together with them, this program has been started at our headquarters to be more efficient and ready for the future and the long term. I'd like to thank the employees for making us ready for the future, ladies and gentlemen, also in Lower Saxony and for the industrial location Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, I am and remain convinced that we have a strong strategy with speed, competence and passion, and we make Volkswagen even a better company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ralph. And with that, let's get started with our Q&A session. Now, let me point out again, as I said before, if you have any questions, please write to us, use the chat window. But also, if you want, you can dial in by telephone and join us here in the studio. Now, there may be a time lag in the live stream, so there may be a slight delay, so rest assured we can still get your question. And also mute your telephone then when you're not speaking. Now, in addition to Ralf Brandstätter and Alexander Seitz, we have Murat Axelair, Head of Sourcing, then Head of R&D Thomas Ulbrich, Head of Production Dr. Christian Vollmer, and the Head of HR at Volkswagen, Marcellus Puig. Joining us is also Klaus Selmer, Head of Production, the Head of Sales, and Stefan Wallenstein. Great to have you, gentlemen. Now, question number one from Frank Johansson, Automobilwoche. Mr. Dies yesterday said 50 to 100,000 units because of the shortages of wiring harnesses have been shifted to overseas. Now, which of these account for passenger cars, and where are the regions to which you have shifted those vehicle volumes? Well, that's about the order of magnitude that we are going to reallocate now. We've done a volume planning according to world regions. Semiconductors remain scarce this year, so those production outages we've had here in Europe, we want to compensate across our global production network. Ideally, I should say. Now, for that, we use and predominantly make good use of the global Volkswagen production network. So incrementally, we're now trying to shift those volumes to North and South America and China. So to distribute them across the globe to compensate for production losses for a short period of time. Now, the exact share, in other words, how many volumes are going to what regions, is certainly something we can talk about at a later point. But rest assured, our teams are working on that, and they're really trying to reschedule those vehicle projects. Jan Schwarz from Reuters asks, can you talk about that wiring harness issue and the impacts those have in individual plants? Where can you shift them around? To what other production facilities? Maybe Christian Vollmer would like to talk about that, and then also Murat Aksel. Good morning, Mr. Schwarz. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have different sources from which we buy wiring harnesses, different brands, different plants, and the majority of them comes from Ukraine. Now, the Zwickau plant, for instance, we had to stop first, and then also Wolfsburg and other plants. But also Emden, Pamplona, Palmela are currently running as scheduled. Now, in Wolfsburg, we are planning to ramp up production again on Monday with the first shift, and then in week 13, we are going to start two-shift operations, and as things stand now, Zwickau will come online in week 14 again. Now, the second part of the question, I'd like to pass that on to my colleague, Murat Aksel. Thank you, Christian. Now, Mr. Schwarz, your question about those cable harnesses and where we purchase them and where they can be shifted to. Well, up front, let me say there are some wiring harnesses out there that can be very complex. Now, those, for the European plants, they are purchased from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Romania, and Moldova. And the second hub is North Africa, Tunisia, and Morocco. And that is certainly also true for the Volkswagen Group. So all of our products come from those two regions of the world. Now, for suppliers that work in and out of Ukraine and also deliver their products to other parts of the world, we are now developing a dual-track strategy. Let me confirm this here. We are, of course, interested in lasting, durable peace in the region. And we would like to continue work with our reliable suppliers who have always worked with us, supplied their products just in time, and we hope they can start production again. And it happens occasionally already, and we obviously support those suppliers, and we support them in that. But our company needs to take the precautions in case this war should continue. And that's what we do. We don't really shift production. We actually duplicate our production and in other facilities that we believe are safe. So this is currently ongoing. So we're pursuing this double strategy. We are still producing those harnesses in Ukraine, but also add alternative sources as well. Now, Christian, there's a follow-up question on what you've just said, and this question comes from NDR. How do we continue with Wolfsburg, Emden, Hanover, and Dresden in terms of the furlough scheme? So when do you think can we go back to normal operations after furlough ends? Well, let me do that in that order. In Zwickau, the plan is to start in week 14, early April. Wolfsburg, it's week 12, which is next week. Dresden, as we know now, will going to start operation again a little later. Early April, it will still remain closed. Emden, we can continue to work with reduced headcount. And Osnabrück is also online, and Palmela as well, where we're building the T-Roc convertible.
Joining us by telephone is Mr. Münskens from the FAZ Frankfurt newspaper. What's your question? Well, thank you very much for letting me join by phone. My first question is the long delivery times and waiting times for newly ordered cars. Mr. Dies said yesterday that e-vehicles have been sold out, even into next year. How did that happen? For the Volkswagen brand, which models are still orderable and available at short notice, which are not? What do you tell customers when they have to wait for so long? Then there was a search on recycling with several OEMs' sites. Have these people turned up on Volkswagen's doorstep as well? Well, the first question on the waiting times, I would like Klaus Zellmer to please answer that. Klaus Zellmer from the ID3 that I'm sitting on. I've joined you here over my car phone. And on the long delivery times, there are some quicker availability instances for the ID4 than the ID3. In both cases, we're talking more than 6 months. In how far customers can shorten their waiting times, of course, all is a function of the worrying semiconductor shortage. My colleague has just said we're trying to optimize things. Some customers can be made part of our Auto Abo, the subscription. For a fixed price, you can drive an ID3 or ID4 on a monthly subscription basis. So we have motivated, we are motivated salespeople, and we are experts. We're not happy to make customers wait. The next topic, recycling, that will be a question regarding topics that the group deals with, so we'd like to advise you to wait for them. Then we have a question from Mr. Helsner from Fortune Helsner by phone. Thank you. First on China, we just heard from Reuters that Volkswagen has to be careful in Shanghai and Shenzhen. There have been COVID outbreaks, so that production will grind to a halt. Foshan was another area. Besides Shanghai, will there be portfolio problems that you expect on our MQB in China? And could you please comment on the report, which we had a couple of weeks ago, that the ID Life was basically scrapped and discontinued? What repercussions does that have on the targets for 2020? You said it's MAB basis, not MAB entry. I don't know whether things have changed here along with the name. And looking at the inflationary tendencies that we've seen here, can you still offer the price at the 20,000 euros price tag in 2025 that you have envisaged? On the effects of COVID on our Chinese situation, let me ask Stefan Wellenstein to comment. Well, in China, we have a COVID situation which we deem to be volatile but not critical. You've rightly noted that where we have locations of Volkswagen, the population have 48 hours of production stop. This ends today, and we're planning to restart production tomorrow fully. That, of course, depends on how many employees can come back to work. So parts of the living areas are still in partial lockdown. In the north, VWAV Changchun also has the situation that they can't manufacture because from Monday to Wednesday they have the stop production, but from tomorrow they'll start running again. You mentioned also the region in the south of China. Here we aren't affected. Our factories are running continually. In the component area, they run continually, particularly the component making, for instance, engine making factories are affected, and the vehicle markets are affected, but with the shift models, what we're losing in terms of these 48 or 36 hours can be recovered with more intensive shifts going forward. We feel this can be managed also in absolute terms. In Ningbo, we had in September a similar situation, which went on for 2 weeks, and we caught up. So it's quite an effort to do fine controlling of material flows, but it can be done. Then the ID Life, the ID Life remains part of our product planning, of our product line. Neither the car nor the timing or the scheduling have been changed. Quite on the contrary, we are working with great vim on a design variant for this small compact vehicle. And the price target for our customers to offer a car which for 20,000 euros, starting with this entry price, makes electromobility democratic and generally available for everyone. The car is based on the MEB basis, the platform, so that will launch every year a new product till 2024. We've always said that, and that remains part of our planning. When we say MEB, then that involves individual modules from our MEB and toolkit, of course, which we can scale right up to that point and will have a better cost production position to be able to offer cars at this price and still make a profit. So nothing at all in the direction of scrapping that model. So please don't believe these false herrings. The inclusion of foreign car groups and like other groups, you're threatening to pull out of Russia. Is that true? Do other car makers plan the same thing? Well, this is fairly recent information. It was a concrete decision of our company. That's outstanding still. Of course, this is seen with grave concern, as we've learned about it. In a first step, because of the repercussions of the Ukraine crisis and the war there, the bellicose activities here, we've decided to stop production in Russia, to cease it for the moment and not sell any cars there. The parts sale continues for spare parts. And when it comes to employees, we've decided to continue paying their wages and salaries at 80% of the original wages and salaries paid. So this is what we offer from Volkswagen, and that's the state of things, and we are monitoring very closely what decisions Russia takes and the legislator.
Well, follow-up question. What's the impact of the Russia sanctions, and would that mean that vehicles in Europe get more expensive? Well, the first impact we've already seen right away. Because of the supply situation, the just-in-time deliveries of wiring harnesses just stop. And then also we see that commodity prices are going up as well. Now, what we need to do is to analyze what's really happening, review the whole process, and then obviously, ideally, also take countermeasures. And that is a responsibility for all of us now, to understand, to digest really literally what's happening here. And then we'll need to see how we deal with those effects, and then, well, see what that means in terms of cost optimization, pricing, sales incentives, tacticals. I mean, this is maybe something, obviously, that we can do in order to mitigate the effects. Joe Miller from Financial Times has a question for Moritz Axel. Do you think that the commodity price increase will delay the introduction of low-cost electric vehicles like the ID Life? Can you build a BEV for 20,000 euros? Well, fundamentally, commodity prices do not only have an impact on electric vehicles, same is true for internal combustion engines. Steel getting more expensive, also when it comes to rhodium and palladium that we need for exhaust gas treatment. So we see a parallel development. I wouldn't therefore say that electric vehicles are affected more than others. There's a question for Alexander's side from Mr. Schweiger, Braunschweiger Zeitung. What were the special items? Were they only applicable for the diesel issue? Now, first of all, we said that the operating profit before special items amounted to the 2.5 billion. Now, after special items is 1.8, so the effect as such is about 700 million euros. And that is an amount that is due to reserves on legal risks related indeed to the diesel issue. Question for Klaus Zellmer. In the past year, 370,000 EVs were sold. What's our plan for 22? Well, the plan is ambitious, obviously. Our order book is full. And we would love to really build as many cars as we could, with the great products that we have in our pipeline. But given the current supply shortages, I'm not going to give you a number here, because the options we have when it comes to the production network are really volatile. So I cannot give you an exact number. But obviously, we want to grow, significantly grow, versus our good sales figures in 2021. Thank you very much, Klaus. Ralph, a question that we hear again and again. Is China or Volkswagen too dependent on China? Well, we believe our Chinese business is a strength. China being one of the leading automotive markets with a great growth potential. Experts believe that that is a market that will grow from 20 to 30 million vehicles per annum, and it will grow. So that is a market where we're already enjoying a strong footprint. And that's a footprint that we'd like to consolidate, both for existing conventional drivetrains, but also for new energy vehicles. So we want to retain and grow it. Now, our business, being a global car maker, is dependent on our economies of scale that we have generated globally. So we're enjoying a strong position in China, also in Europe. In South America, we now have developed also a strong presence. We're already number 2 in that market. And there's certainly potential to grow even further, and that is true certainly for North America. So I'm talking about opportunities here, opportunities that we have thanks to the beginning transformation of the entire car market to become more electric. Is a good opportunity for all of us. So we're really happy that the ID.4 is enjoying such critical acclaim in America. The ID. Buzz has been mentioned earlier today. So it's incredibly popular already, and the media response that we've received is outstanding. So we're going to launch that vehicle in America as well. So entire MEB product pipeline allows you to see a few more surprises, but we'll let you know about it at a later point.
For Thomas Ulbrich, will there be an electric variant for the T-Roc, an electrified version? Will it be built in Portugal? Well, of course, we are advancing the traditional IC vehicles, and we have intentions for HEV technology from the beginning, from the middle of the century. Which models will be affected will be decided shortly. A question from China. Stefan? Our main business is still with vehicles with IC drives. Is there any concern that we may lose competitiveness here? No, I believe we are on a good trajectory. For 70 years, we've been able to successfully hold our own in this segment. We are still number 1 here, don't forget that. I said recently in a statement that we have an innovation home roadmap for China. And we have activities here for the ID as well. And we have IC engines which are based on the MQB for the next 34, 36 months. Thomas Ulbrich knows that. We have an innovative basis, which will keep us successful in the volume segment. I'm not concerned. Another question on China. Do you have the wrong models in the e-vehicle area, particularly when it comes to premium vehicles and entry-level good value models? Are you planning something there? Well, let me answer it by putting it in context. The MEV market is still fairly young. It's atypical as a market. 40% of battery electric vehicles, which are already fairly cheap, then that might mean vehicles below 8,000 euros. And it's easy to imagine that Volkswagen, with the technology we offer and the safety technology, innovation in our cars, cannot compete with those market segments, with those competitors. And we have cars where brands like Audi from the group or other German premium car makers are not the alternative in the IC engine area. Volkswagen says we have the car that should be affordable for the largest share of the Chinese population. And we see that with the new ID, that we have 2 to 3 years younger customers, young families that are buying their classic Volkswagen. And over the next 2 to 3 years, we expect that the e-vehicle market normalizes, and we are, with our typical Volkswagen products and positioning, we will be in the heart of the Chinese electric vehicle markets. Klaus Tüller, South Korea. Volkswagen has announced a number of new models that are produced in Korea. In Korea, only the ID.4. Are there more announcements for the ID family in South Korea? Well, the ID.4 GDX has been planned for Korea. And of course, we're looking into whether it's possible to have the ID.5, for instance, whether we can bring that to Korea. That has not been decided yet, but the decision is in the making. Then we have the Aero B and an ID Buzz, which are still further down the decision pipeline, but we are working towards that. Thomas Herbulle from Deutschlandfunk wants to know, have natural gas cars a future in the electric future? Surely, says Mr. Ulrich, they do have a future, but not on a sustainable basis. Of course, when it comes to natural gas, when you look at the entire value chain, then with natural gas, with the reduction potential, watt per kilometer, you won't be able to go further down. So that's a transitory technology which will then be phased out over the next years by the success train that the batteries in the electric cars are going to show. Alexander Seitz, a question for you. Carsten Stevens from Börsenzeitung would like to know why, considering the current situation, are you confident to pay a return on sales premium as you've announced it, and where do we stand for operating margins, and what are your answers here? Well, first, we are keeping to our plan for 2023, 6% return on sales, and we assume that at the very latest, then all the semiconductor capacity issues have been solved, that the normal strain production runs, that we have alternatives, whether that the suppliers are up and running, whether it's been Romania or other countries. Overheads are an important component of this, concomitant with achieving our targets. In 2020, we've achieved our targets, and that's a big addition, of course. And the ramp-up of electromobility, the economies of scale, will be leveraged fully in 2023. Upfront CapEx, such as development expenditure, have been financed by then, will have been financed by then. Just to give you the buzzword, economies of scale, leveraging, And within Accelerate, we have the 6%, which seems realistic. Klaus, a question from Autocode. A couple of months ago, Volkswagen presented the ID.3 GTX at the IAA show. When can we expect further details or a world launch? I don't remember confirming that, but maybe you have some details on the launch. Well, I believe we said at some time that the GTX will be a beautiful brand shaper for all ID vehicles, which is, on the ID.3, we are considering things like that, but we cannot announce a launch date yet. GTX, like GTD, GTI, etc., just to keep within the Golf family. And this ID model is the top of that segment.
Ralph, in Germany and France, there are already deadlines that specify the end of life of internal combustion engines. But do you think that if you use biofuels and synthetic fuels to extend the lifetime of internal combustion engines? It's not a scenario for us because we're a volume car maker. And when it comes to transformation, we clearly focus on electric mobilities. I think the production of biofuels is certainly possible, but it's limited. And I do not think that it can power an entire vehicle fleet. So it's for that reason also that we are single-mindedly focusing on the electric transformation. Question from Mr. Schreiber, AFP. How do you make sure that you can ramp up your factories again if the Ukraine war continues and you find it hard to localize cable harnesses elsewhere? And another question for China. How can you make sure that you avoid lockdowns even in smaller COVID situations? Is that a risk? Now, Mr. Schreiber, I answered that question before. We are pursuing this double strategy. So our Ukraine plans should continue to run. We have some good concepts, and we do receive material from Ukraine. As we've heard from Christian from next year, we're going to restart production here at Wolfsburg for the Golf. But on top of that, we work on our duplication strategy, because some vehicles are also built in other factories where we're extending capacities and literally duplicate capacities. So that is our current contingency strategy. And there's a question on COVID lockdowns in China. Yes, MOREL. I'm happy to take that. Now, COVID lockdowns in China for Europeans or Germans, that may sound unusual, but China can be very flexible and is always trying to strike a good balance between healthcare and economic interests. So hitherto, we have not seen a situation where we had to deal with extended lockdowns. I mean, it was Ningbo 2 weeks in December. Now Changchun and Anting is going to affect us for a couple of days only, not weeks. And with our headcount, with our workforce, we're in a position to really respond flexibly and run different shift operations. So I continue to maintain it's going to be a volatile situation. We have more than 60 regions in China, individual municipalities and districts that are affected, and that will force us to make changes here and there. But I'm not seeing a structural problem that is going to preoccupy us in the next weeks or months for our production schedules. Thank you. Stefan, question from Autocar for Thomas Ulbrich. How is the Trinity going to affect other entry-level models like the ID Life? Well, in the long term, there certainly will be a combination of the platforms, thanks to the modular system. And this is what we're good at Volkswagen. We're modular, so we can combine different platforms, different modules, if we want to scale them up. So you can use them across different platforms. But as we start production, the ID Life, because of its different market positioning, because it's a different product, it's a different entry level, it's not going to get the same features and attributes as the Trinity. Now we're bumping up against the end here. Thomas, for you, question from South Korea. Can you say why electric vehicles, when it comes to total cost of ownership, are really cheaper than internal combustion engines? Well, that's because of the technology. An electric motor, thanks to its efficiency, given its conversion from energy into motion, is always going to be 25 to 30% more efficient than an internal combustion engine. And it's true in many markets now, because in many markets we see pricing models, electricity and fossil fuels, they have a different price tag, right? So this will mean that electric cars will be more compelling for many more drivers, given their special driving profiles. So electric vehicles will be more efficient, will be more competitive, and that in itself suggests that electrifying our vehicle fleet does make sense also in the volume segment. It's unstoppable. Now, first question from Autohome to China or to Ralph. The Accelerate strategy is now a year old. So where do you see the biggest progress being made, and how does Volkswagen define itself? Well, our Accelerate strategy defines 4 fields that we want to drive forward: e-mobility, digital, autonomous driving, and new business models. And we're working on all 4 of them, and we've seen tangible results. Our MEB vehicles are now rolled out in 3 regions of the world, so we have many different attractive models out there already. Every year we're rolling out new electric models, and this is also what we're going to prepare going forward. We're not losing sight of that. We're moving forward, pressing ahead with that trajectory. When it comes to the digital transformation, you can actually see what we've achieved now in our existing projects, existing models, the ID.5, the ID. Buzz. They're always kept up to date thanks to an ongoing software upgrade. We're already receiving now excellent feedback, and people are telling us we have made great strides ahead in terms of software quality. And now that software is available for the entire ID family thanks to our OTA updates. So the ID. Buzz or the ID.5 will be launching very quickly and very soon without any major bumps and issues, I think. Or, to put it the other way round, we're now reaping the benefits of our hard work up front, and we can also scale up software architecture in those new vehicles, and this allows us also to be profitable. And then finally, new business models. I said before, we're talking about functions on demand now. They exist already, and every day, people on their info screen in the vehicle can click on a button and purchase additional functions. It's going really well. New business models like car subscriptions. Every month, we're talking about 150, 200 new customers who are subscribing to this model, and we're also winning over new customers, young customers, for our new sales channels. And when it comes to autonomous driving and driver assist systems for our vehicles, we have made great strides ahead as well. We use a multifunction camera to improve the map material on our screens. The collective or swarm data go back into every individual vehicle, so exact route and lane guidance, better availability. The lane change assist is also semi-automated. Now, all of that is already visible. It's tangible benefits in the driver assist systems. And now, finally, in our strategy, we're also saying we need to earn our transformation. So we want to reduce the break-even level. And I think 2021 already has shown us and has shown you that despite the crisis and despite reduced volume sales, we were growing our profitability by 5 times. Not only because we're focusing on new technologies, but we've been doing our homework on cost reduction. Well, thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This has taken us to the end of our press conference. For those of you who want to have more information, tune in to Audi and Porsche's press conferences that will air tomorrow and on Sunday. So for the time being, thank you very much for your interest in Volkswagen. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time.